Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this afternoon's webinar, second of the webinar of today. Just a bit of an introduction before we get into the detail that our analysts will dig into with the examples that we're going to provide and the analysis support that we're going to provide. But firstly, I'm Andrew Nicholson. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Osprey Flight Solutions. And the idea of these webinars is that it is today's is a first of a series of webinars that we intend to run probably every month or at the most every couple of months. And the intent is to deliver our analysis, our assessment of subjects that are of key interest to the aviation industry at that particular time. Most importantly, will hopefully bring value to you all through a deeper understanding of those situations and also access to our analyst team. It's also an opportunity for us to show you a little of the processes that we go through during our assessment process, which I hope may help you with your own risk assessment and risk management processes. As I said, the most important thing is that this webinar brings value to you, and the best way we can make sure that happens is to get your feedback and input on what subjects you'd like to hear in future webinars. So throughout this webinar, the Q&A function is available at the bottom of the portal, the webinar portal that you have all logged in through. So please do submit any questions that you have at any time throughout this webinar. But at the end of the webinar, after Matt has gone through the examples, the situation scenarios he's going to provide the analysis on, we'll do the Q&A session. We'll try to get through as many of the questions as we can at the end. There are quite a few people who've joined the webinar today, which is great. It's great to have you all here, but it does mean that we're going to stick to the emailed questions or the questions through the Q&A function in the webinar rather than live questions to keep things as simple as possible. Also, at the end of the webinar, during the Q&A session, we're going to put a poll up which gives some examples of future webinar subjects that we have thought of including. Please do submit your preferences for that, and if you have any further ideas or any particular issues that you'd like us to look at and potentially do webinars on in the future, please don't hesitate to either put them in a Q&A or send us an email, and the contact details of the emails will be at the end of the presentation of the webinar. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to our head of analysis, Matthew Borie, who's going to take you through some of those issues and concerns that I've highlighted. Matthew, thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Borie, head of analysis for Osprey Flight Solutions. I just want to give a bit of background on my experience to familiarize everyone. I've been with Osprey Flight Solutions for 2 years now in the head of analysis role. Prior to that, I was at the Med Air and Control Risk Aviation Security Center for 3 years. And before entering the private sector, I spent 8 years in the U.S. Air Force as an intelligence analyst, providing support to various fighter squadrons and special operations forces in many different parts of the globe as part of an 8-year enlistment. I'm very excited today to go through some of the areas of concern within the aviation security realm that we're going to take a look at through the Osprey Flight Solutions system. But before we dive into the detail on the subjects for today, I want to discuss the background of the Osprey Flight Solutions database that we use. By the numbers for the instances in our database, we have over 460,000 total occurrences. But to generate this much data, we use advanced computing techniques every few minutes to gather information from over 200,000 sources in 60 different languages. To ensure the accuracy and the integrity of the data, we use those machine learning algorithms to multi-source corroborate, categorize, date correlate, and geolocate the incidents before they're submitted to our ping database. The database, as I said, is comprised of over 460,000 total events with 300 million data points covering nearly 15 years. It's been filtered, analyzed, and evaluated by technical means as well as our analysts so that we can identify trends and patterns within the aviation security realm. Our team of analysts at Osprey are all industry leaders in their field. They can ensure that any one time a global picture of the aviation security environment is available to our client base. The objectivity and consistency of our analysis is ensured by the number of sources and the amount of data that we pull in. Through advanced data management techniques and the use of a comprehensive data-driven source confidence process, we ensure that challenges such as single source and circular reporting are eliminated. One of the most significant benefits to the large data set that we have at Osprey Flight Solutions is the ability to create visualizations. The monitoring of any risk type in any location is possible looking at historic data sets. Seeing and understanding trends and patterns is also possible as we identify increasing or decreasing risk early and accurately. This is what Osprey Explore allows us to do. And what we're going to do now is transition into the Osprey system to take a look at what Osprey Explore is. Osprey Explore is an innovative interface that gives users the ability to access, query, and engage with the entirety of our ping database as well as reporting. This allows us in the form of our analysis team and users to curate insights specific to their own operations and requirements by accessing live data analytics through a user customizable dashboard and map-based interface. This is best demonstrated by using it live to support discussions on some of the key issues facing the aviation industry today. As Andrew mentioned at the start, as we go through these, please do ask questions through the QA facility in the webinar portal, and we're going to try to answer as many of those questions as possible at the end of the session. So right now I'm going to transition into the Osprey Explore interface. Before we dive right into Beirut International Airport in Lebanon, which has faced some challenges for operators to overcome recently, I just want to talk about our dashboard overview. Looking at the display dashboard, it's our standard layout. It has a line graph of incident totals at the location in the selected time frame. So in this case, you're looking at a 6-month time frame with monthly incident totals on the line chart. We also have a stacked bar chart which shows the same number of incident totals during the 6-month time frame, but it also includes a breakdown of the type of incident that is totaled in each. For the display, I'll bring that up now, and we also include a pie chart, and on the pie chart it also breaks down the individual types of incidents that we're seeing, but on a percentage portion. Below there's a map with locations of where our ping data is located in the area, as well as a list of the alerts that Osprey has issued on the location within the time frame, this case being the last 6 months. So we'll dive into Beirut International Airport now. So on the 14th of February of this year, the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, completed an audit of Beirut Airport in Lebanon. Lebanese authorities indicated that the ICAO audit had identified security deficiencies at the installation. The airport issued a statement regarding the issues shortly after the audit was conducted. Following the instructions of the ICAO audit and in wake of the security inspection team's input, Beirut Airport had decided to put in place additional measures regarding passenger carriages leaving the airport, pending the implementation of alternative security measures to facilitate the flow of passengers to and from the departure hall. In this situation, an increase in operational incidents, particularly those related to aviation security, gave an indication that such a significant regulatory event was likely. In particular, there are multiple elements of security forces under the control of separate government departments conducting uncoordinated protective activities at the airport. Checkpoints leading to airport terminals were manned by a separate guard force than that of the airside and landside aviation security personnel. And this is a serious issue due to the historical threat posed by car bombings in Beirut, including a July 2017 thwarted plot whereby Islamic State militants planned to target the airport via a car bomb. There had also been smuggling activity and reports of corrupt staff at the airport contained within our data that we've tracked over the last 6 months. Previous insider threat reporting from 2016 and 2017 related to airport staff being arrested for links to the Islamic State make the incident types observed in our data reporting from late 2018 of serious concern, particularly when coupled with enduring concerns regarding spillover from the Syrian conflict and the movements of the remnants of Islamic State or returning foreign fighters with ease of access into Lebanon over land borders. Now, looking at the data, during January of 2019, in the month prior to the ICAO audit, we saw a 50% increase in incidents from the month prior. In addition, the number of operational incidents at the airport in Beirut during January 2019 were about 50% higher than the previous 3 and 4 month averages. And during the month of the ICAO audit, the number of operational incidents in February matched that to the incident total of January, indicating a documented change in the aviation security environment. Now, as we look forward, we expect the monthly rate of operational incidents at the airport in Beirut to remain elevated, specifically similar to the levels that we saw in November and December of 2018. We expect those levels of elevated incident totals to remain at that state through approximately June of 2019. In addition, we expect Beirut Airport to announce the implementation of ICAO-advised security posture remedies within the next 6 months. However, should Beirut Airport fail to implement such measures, either ICAO or other leading national level civil aviation governing bodies such as the UK DFT or the French DGAC may request the implementation of a more strenuous outside body audit or inspection regime, or otherwise announce publicly Lebanese non-compliance with international standards for aviation security. This could have potentially damaging consequences for the airport, such as a ban on carriers to the airport from certain countries using it. What we can take away from the example here in Beirut is that there was a clear increase in operational incidents, mainly aviation security related, in the run-up to and immediately prior to a significant regulatory event. In this case, the ICAO audit that highlighted the operational environment at the airport had changed for the worse. We're going to shift gears a little bit now as we continue through the case studies. Instead of looking at an individual airport, we're going to look at a country that has an ongoing set of conflict zone issues. We're going to take a look at Libya. And flying through the airspace over Libya poses a challenge for any operator in risk management terms. It offers a more direct route for many flights, and the environment is certainly changing, but confusing regulatory signals and some concerning indicators of enduring air and air defense capabilities demand continued caution. On 19 March, the FAA issued an updated conflict zone notice and special federal aviation regulation for Libyan airspace, which now only restricts U.S. aviation operators from conducting flights below flight level 300 over the country. Previously, the U.S. FAA had restricted U.S. operators from conducting all forms of flights within Libyan airspace at any altitude and prohibited operators from conducting flights to airports in Libya. The new US FAA SFAR and NOTAM regime is similar to the conflict zone notice issued by Germany on 5 February, which advises German operators to not plan or conduct flights within Libyan airspace at altitudes below flight level 260. However, the European Aviation Safety Agency, along with the UK and French civil aviation authorities, advise civil aviation operators to defer all forms of flight operations within Libyan airspace or to airports in Libya due to the enduring conflict zone environment. In this situation, however, there were clear indicators that a significant regulatory event, such as the FAA and Germany, allowing US and German operators respectively to resume overflight of Libya at altitudes above flight level 300 or flight level 260 was likely. Our tracking of data shows that the conflict zone incident and event data, which negatively affects civil aviation in Libya, has decreased by approximately 50% in the past year and approximately 80% since a past year high water mark in 2018. Looking at the data contained in the Osprey Explore interface, you can see the trend of incidents decreasing significantly from May of 2018 through March of 2019. However, though the FAA, following Germany, has now allowed US aviation operators to overfly Libya at altitudes above flight level 300, we continue to assess Libyan airspace to be an extreme risk airspace environment at all altitudes. Both the Misrata and Tobruk pseudo-state actor factions have combat aircraft within their inventories capable of conducting air-to-air engagements at altitudes above flight level 260. In addition, in early February 2019, the Tobruk pseudo-state actor faction commenced military operations in the Fezzan region of Libya, located in the south of the country, in order to take control of the El Fil oil field. If we look at the map contained in Osprey Flight Solutions, you'll see the area in Libya near Sabha where the Fezzan region is located, and the LNA activity in that area is depicted on the map. When we get into the context of the military activity that the Tobruk faction conducted, on 8 February, Tobruk stated that landing and takeoff from airports and aviation facilities in southern Libya is forbidden unless authorized by Tobruk, including unpaved airstrips, and that any aircraft, foreign or local, that breaches their established no-fly zone will be forced to land, and if orders are not obeyed, they'll be treated as a hostile target. On 9 February, a Tobruk faction aircraft carried out a warning airstrike on an airstrip in the El Fil oil field. And on 10 February, the Tobruk faction used combat aircraft to identify and escort a commercial passenger aircraft which had taken off from the El Fil oil field airstrip. The commercial passenger aircraft was directed to land at an airport near Sabha in the Fezzan region. After being escorted and given clearance to land, it filed the necessary protocols and was then allowed to conduct operations to mitigate airport. When we look at the individual data, you can see where this incident occurred in the Fezzan region, and the data within the Osprey system can provide more context to individual incidents. In this case, the Tobruk faction, LNA Air Force, making a commercial aircraft conduct a forced landing. This is an example of why we would advise operators to ensure flight plans are correctly filed, that they attain proper special approvals for flight operations to sensitive locations, and to obtain relevant overflight permits prior to departure. In addition, through the analysis of commercial satellite imagery, social media exploitation, and traditional media sources, we assess that the other factions in Libya continue to possess conventional surface-to-air missiles, or SAM systems, and their components, or are working to refurbish high-altitude anti-aircraft missile systems. While we assess the intent to target legal civil aviation does not exist, standards of training, capability, and logistics continue to highlight the continued risk of misidentification and or collateral damage. In addition, the existence of such SAM capabilities in Libya does indicate that the situation needs to be monitored closely. Now, we're going to go a little bit more in depth into the continued access to conventional SAM systems and their components, because while we have seen a decrease in the overall incident data in Libya over the past year, the capability to target aircraft at altitudes above flight level 260 appears to continue to exist in the country. we'll go back to the slideshow here to take a look at this. So what we have specifically identified is that both pseudo-state actor factions in Misrata and Tobruk, Libya, have worked to refurbish Russian-made SA-6 gainful conventional SAM systems. The SA-6 has the capability to engage aircraft at altitudes up to flight level 450 and at ranges out to 15 miles. Now, on the slides, what you're able to see is images that were posted to social media as well as reported in traditional media of the systems that have been refurbished, or components of the systems that have been refurbished by the Misrata and Tobruk factions. However, that's not where our analysis ends. We've also used commercial satellite imagery from late 2018 to identify a change in the intent of the Misrata faction to re-establish high altitude anti-aircraft missile capabilities within their inventory. Specifically, the imagery from late 2018 shows that two conventional SAM garrisons in the city of Misrata have had increased levels of activity that haven't been seen in a number of years. So if we look first at the West Garrison in Misrata, we saw no observed activity at this conventional SAM garrison site from June 2016 through November of 2018. In the image below it for the West Garrison, however, we can see that in December of 2018, circled in red, TEL activity at two different areas of the SAM garrison, as well as potential radar and support vehicle activity in an adjacent location. Comparatively, at the East Garrison in Misrata, we saw a lack of activity at this site, which is located close to Misrata Airport, during June 2016 through June 2018. However, just as observed in the West Garrison site, the East Garrison site shows activity via satellite imagery in November and December of 2018 of support vehicle, TEL, and potential radar activity at the site. Now, as we look forward, we do not assess the factions in Libya will reach a peaceful reconciliation within the next 6 months. In addition, a resumption of unsafe military air and air defense activity, similar to what occurred in February 2019, as previously discussed, is likely to occur in the airspace of the country in the lead up to the summer of 2019. Most likely in coastal cities of Tripoli, Misrata, or the Sirte oil basin, based on historical analysis of the data contained within the Osprey system. In the absence of a codified ceasefire agreement or reconciliation agreed upon by the factions in Libya, or the unilateral handover of high-altitude air and air defense weapons by the factions to UN control, we assess the airspace over the country will remain in a state of extreme risk and complexity. Should the UK, France, and EASA amend their prohibitions on Libyan airspace, it would indicate international consensus on the issue. Such regulatory alignment would also indicate that close source intelligence corroborated across governments via information sharing initiatives had provided substantial clarity on the capability intent of the factions within Libya to target aviation. Were these items to occur, Osprey would reevaluate its risk assessment for Libyan airspace and keep the aviation industry abreast of the situation using the most up-to-date and highest quality open source intelligence reporting at our disposal. The key takeaway here from Libya is that the situation highlights one of the most significant challenges facing operators. The FAA clearly has indications that have been given them comfort to relax their advice for Libyan airspace overflight. They will, in all likelihood, be informing their carriers and operators as such. But what does the rest of the industry do in the face of the UK, CAA/DFT, and French DGAC, as well as EASA, continuing to advise avoiding overflight of Libyan airspace? The bottom line is it takes a brave security manager to recommend passage through Libyan airspace at this time due to the continuing complexity of the operational environment. I'm going to transition now back to the Osprey Explore system, and we're going to shift gears a bit from what we've discussed for a conflict zone overflight environment back to an airport environment, but from a crew transport perspective. So within Explore, we're going to shift to Johannesburg and OR Tambo International Airport. The international airport in Johannesburg, South Africa poses a more tactical challenge to operators, which is no less of a potential risk to their operations, their crew, and their passengers. Documented high rates of crime, including violent criminal activity in the surrounding areas of international airports and main urban centers of South Africa, have the potential to negatively impact transiting flight crews. As you can see from Osprey Explore, over the past year, multiple high-profile armed robberies and shootings at or near Johannesburg's OR Tambo International Airport reflect the notable threat of violent criminal activity facing aviation operators within South Africa. However, our tracking of the incidents over the past year reflects trend data of increasing criminal activity, followed by subsequent short-term lulls, again, which precede additional spikes in violent criminal acts. The data indicates that while security forces in the airport environments can respond with protective measures following spikes in violent crime to quell the activity, such actions are typically temporary and do not portend a long-term positive change in the aviation operating environment. Based on the analysis of the data, we assess there will be a spike in armed criminal activity at or near OR Tambo International Airport during mid-2019, and operators are advised to remain prepared to adjust crew ground transport arrangements in the months ahead. In addition, changes to the security forces posture at the airport and in the surrounding environments is expected to be reactive and heavy-handed during this time frame. Criminals and police are likely to be armed, and pre-flight personnel security awareness training is advisable for aircrew. As we now shift to the Asia Pacific region, we're going to take a look at the international airport in Dhaka and discuss the recent attempted hijacking of a Beeman Airlines flight that departed from Dhaka and highlights an ongoing concern about security at the airport. On 24 February 2019, there was an attempted hijacking of a Beeman Airlines flight from Dhaka. The flight landed in Chittagong, which was originally planned as a scheduled stop, but by this point, the attempted hijack was underway. There, a special forces operation was conducted, killing the perpetrator, who was found to be armed with a toy gun and some innocuous items fashioned into a fake explosive device. Of most concern was the fact that he had been able to get a realistic-looking toy pistol through security at Dhaka Airport. And again, in this instance, there was a clear indicator that such a significant aviation security event was a strong possibility. Looking at the data in Osprey Explore, you can see during December 2018, 2 months prior to the hijack event, operational incidents at Dhaka Airport increased over 100% from the previous 3-month average. In addition, during the month prior and month of the hijack event, January and February of 2019, the number of operational incidents at Dhaka Airport increased an additional 50% from the December 2018 spike, indicating a documented change in the aviation security environment at the installation. Incident reporting from the month following the hijack shows events had increased 100% from the January-February 2019 timeframe and 300% from December 2018, indicating authorities were working to implement new security measures and publicly announcing incidents at the airport. We expect the monthly rate of operational incidents at Dhaka Airport to remain at a notably elevated level as observed in the month post-hijack, March 2019, through May of 2019, with a potential drop during June 2019 as the airport continues to implement enhanced security measures. However, we expect the implementation of these revised security posture remedies in the next 6 months to be met with additional potential inspections from national level or international governing bodies. Should Dhaka fail to effectively implement security remedies, either international or national level civil aviation governing bodies may request a more strenuous audit and inspection regime, and such entities, Bangladeshi non-compliance with international standards for aviation security, should the operating environment not shift to a favorable position. This could lead to the return of a ban on direct passenger and/or cargo flights, such as those implemented by Australia, Germany, and the UK in the 2015 to 2018 timeframe, following previous concerns regarding the aviation security environment at the country's airports. Looking at Dhaka, there was a clear increase in operational incidents, mainly aviation security, crime, and social unrest related in the run-up and immediately prior to a significant security event, in this case an attempted hijacking, that highlighted the operational environment in the airport had changed. It's a similar takeaway that we saw from the initial look at Beirut Airport, and it's also similar to what we're going to look at next at Manila Airport in the Philippines. Now, as I pull up Manila Airport in the Philippines, this experienced a similar situation as to what we talked about first in Beirut. The compliance of the airport with international standards of aviation security was called into question during 2018 when a leading national level civil aviation governing body announced that an audit of the airport serving the capital of the Philippines had revealed multiple deficiencies in the protective posture. Specifically, on 26 December 2018, the US TSA announced results of an audit of Manila Airport, which concluded that the airport does not maintain and carry out effective security consistent with the security standards established by ICAO. As we've seen elsewhere in the situation above, there were clear indicators that such a significant regulatory event was likely. So we're looking at a 6-month view of Manila, which is similar to what we looked at for Lebanon. One of the things that I want to do, though, is shift the date period that we're looking at, which will provide an even clearer understanding of the change in the operating environment that Osprey observed through our collection and analysis of data. If you look at a 12-month view of the operating environment, you can see that there was a significant increase in incidents that occurred in the May to June timeframe of 2018. So in understanding that a potential change in the operating environment occurred approximately 8 to 9 months ago. Incident totals remain consistent from the May through December timeframe. However, during November of 2018, if you look solely at aviation security events, which I'm going to select now in our stacked bar chart, you can see a 50% spike in the aviation security event totals from October to November of 2018, with November being the month prior to the TSA audit. What this indicates, when combined with the significant increase from May to June and observing the increase in security-specific incidents in October to November, that an audit would potentially show a significant change in the aviation security environment at the installation. Incident data from February and March of 2019 is consistent with the totals observed during November and December of 2018, and the TSA has not changed its stance on the implementation of ICAO security standards at the airport. What we expect to see is the monthly rate of operational incidents at the airport in Manila to remain elevated in similar fashion to the pre-audit months of October, November, and December of 2018 through June 2019. In addition, we expect Manila Airport to announce the implementation of US TSA advised security posture remedies within the next 6 months. However, should Manila fail to implement such measures, either the US TSA or possibly ICAO, along with other leading national level civil aviation governing bodies, may request the implementation of a more strenuous outside body audit or inspection regime. The US FAA IASA Category 1 status for the Philippines would also enter an at-risk state for a downgrade to Category 2 should airport security enhancements not be implemented in a timely fashion within 2019. Along these lines, other leading national level civil aviation governing bodies may announce publicly that the Philippines or the international airport in Manila is in a state of non-compliance with international standards for aviation security, and possibly seek to enforce recommendations and/or implement their own prohibitions on the usage of airports in the Philippines by their carriers, likely to the detriment of the country or the airport's level of business and reputation. Looking at Manila, there was a clear increase in operational incidents, mainly aviation security related, in the run-up and immediately prior to a significant regulatory event, in this case, the US TSA audit, that highlighted the operational environment at the airport had changed in a negative fashion. I'm going to transition back to our presentation, and we'll talk about some key conclusions and takeaways. For our key takeaways, there are several key conclusions that can be drawn from the environments that we've discussed today. The correlation between the indicators and outcomes is stark across all these situations, and there are many more that we have identified that show the same correlation. Tracking of incident data across multiple types is a very effective way of identifying trends, either escalatory or de-escalatory, which can often precede significant regulatory or security events. These events can have a major impact on operations. An issue is that's also worth reiterating is the inconsistency between national and international regulatory bodies and their advice to operators, specifically when it comes to overflight of conflict zones. We know that there is ongoing work to improve the collaboration and therefore consistency between these organizations, but until this point, it remains unresolved. Operators need to have other well-established and coherent sources in order to make informed decisions about their operations. I want to thank everyone for their time today, and I'm now going to hand over to Andrew to cover our Q&A portion of today's webinar.
Great, thanks very much, Matthew. That's fantastic, and thanks for all the information on those particular issues that you covered today. What I'd like to do is, firstly, we're going to put a poll up, which allows you to, as I said at the beginning, to look at some suggested topics for future webinars that you can select your preferences. So please do that as we go through. Also, the Q&A is still open, so please do feel free to ask any further questions. We've got one question which I'll address just in a second. You'll see the poll has come up in front of you now, so please do do make your suggestions, and if you've got any other suggestions or any other topics you'd like to see, then as I said, please do send them through either through the Q&A or through an email. And as you can see, the contact information is there in front of you to send any feedback or any further topics you'd like us to look at over the coming webinars. The one question that came through was relating to support and advice to the crew themselves, and how what are sort of best practices for them in understanding and evaluating the risk when they're conducting overflight, either of conflict zones or into airports where there may be increased risk to the crew conducting their operations, doing their layovers and that kind of thing. Obviously, as crew, it's important that you have confidence and comfort in the risk management processes that the operator that you work for, that you fly for, conducts. And as part of that, the most important part, or one of the most important parts of a risk management process, is the identification and understanding of the threats that are posed, of course, to that particular operation. In order to understand those threats, there are three key categories of source that any risk management process must take into account. Firstly, governments. Governments are a vital source of information. They have access to classified, closed source information that no one else will have access to, and therefore a relationship with the operator you fly for, their relationship with their government, their national body, their national authorities is vital in order to make sure that sharing of information is as good as it can be. But it is not the answer to everything. Governments are very restricted in what they can share, For obvious reasons, they need to protect the sources of their information, which are very close source and very sensitive. Secondly, it's very important that you understand, or your operators understand where they sit in terms of their own risk management processes, and that requires internal reporting. So making sure that an internal reporting structure is in place to ensure that that you understand where how you're operating in terms of the different risk categories through a security management system that is in place within the operators itself. But neither of those two sources of information will deliver the forward-looking and more proactive type of information that is very important, critical, essential for conducting safe operations, and that comes from open source. It's vital that open source is an important part and is an essential component of any comprehensive risk management process. So making sure that those sort of information is coming through and forming part of that process is vitally important. In terms of crew operating in and out of airports that have more complex environments, that have issues and concerns around risk, and OR Tambo was the airport that we raised as a potential area of concern. As Matthew raised and pointed out, pre-operation security awareness training in areas like that is vitally important. But of course, again, going back to the same point I made before, understanding that there is an issue at this particular location is the first thing that needs to happen. Once you understand there's an issue, and that comes through, again, open source and internal reporting, then the mitigating measures can be put in place, and that should include security awareness training. So I hope that answers that